Writing in the Public Interest by Jenna, Sarah, and Sierra. WRA 331, Writing in the Public Interest. The course is of various forms of public writing and rhetoric and their roles in democracy and public culture, practice and modes of public and civic discourse, including deliberative strategies and a range of public literacies. This quote was taken from the syllabus itself. It is offered spring of every year, and it's 3-credit class and requires a completion of Tier 1 writing. We got dual perspectives from our professor, Dr. Don Opel, professor at MSU in the professional writing department, and from a student, Rachel Nanzer. She's a senior at MSU in the Honors College and is on the track of digital and technical writing.
I think that anybody who wants to work in the public sector for the government or for nonprofits in general, it would be very beneficial. At the same time, I think it can be beneficial for people that aren't necessarily trying to go into public service because ethics are everywhere.
Yeah.
And just being able to recognize that and write about things that involve people is important when you go into business, especially if you flounder. Like H&M has had a lot of mishaps. Just things you come across like that, being able to write about social issues, I think helps through being in that writing in the public interest class, because there's a lot of overlap. Yeah.
I think we're training you to be an engaged public citizen, meaning that no matter what job you have, you learn how to participate in the public sphere, meaning in the ways in which we kind of join together and think about the democratic state that we live in, and so there's the first portion of the course, the way that I taught it, you work in the kinds of genres that help, in advocacy genres where you write like op-eds, letters to the editor, think about petitions and organizing your communities to make change. So that's sort of the first part of it. But then the course is specifically geared toward those, I think, that are interested in professional writing in government, law, nonprofit advocacy. So every nonprofit organization usually has to advocate in front of their government officials for funding, for laws that are in support of the work, the mission and vision of the nonprofit. So nonprofit advocacy, community and labor organizing, public relations, public affairs, anything that engages with public administration. So all of those I consider, any work that you may have with the government from a municipal to a federal level.
One of the books that we read talked about just writing in general, and it was the first time I went into active versus passive voice in depth, which is really important. Yeah.
I think that in the way that I taught this course last time, we had a lot of fun working in public policy writing, and the last third of the course we drafted both, so when you watch on like C-SPAN, the committees or different committees in front of the House of Representatives or Senate, so every member of Congress serves on various committees for different issues. And so what we did is we did mock hearings at both the federal House of Representatives and Senate, and also the Michigan House of Representatives and Senate. So what students did was they chose an issue, and then they had to create a mock hearing in which they drafted the questions that the Congress people would ask of those giving expert testimony. They had to draft the expert testimony of, they sort of had to imagine a scenario where someone would come to speak in front of, say, the House of Representatives on a particular topic. So they did that. They did briefs in support, like amicus briefs in support of a particular issue. I think that one of the outcomes was really to see what cultural factors shape what gets talked about and what doesn't get talked about. But it was interesting to me to see the ways that someone would say, this is something that's very important to me, like on my local level, and how is it being taken up or not, and why isn't it? And so we went to the Capitol, and saw a day of deliberation and started thinking about like, well, what's all wrapped up in this? Like what values shape, what like pressures shape what becomes public policy and what doesn't, and then start to think about how you can get a seat at the table to talk about something that's important to you. So I really think this is a course where really you start to align what you believe in personally with what you really want to do with your writing, that might affect other people.
I think that overall I learned how to research legislation in the House and how to talk about it, because that's not something we normally do, just go online and go into all the deep files and stuff. So being able to research and look through that kind of stuff is very beneficial. I learned how to craft a piece of writing based on who the audience is and what the purpose is, right? Because writing about policy or writing for the public interest on a blog is very different than actually going into a courtroom and bringing forth information based on your own specialized experiences and work. I think the freedom to pick the issues and the topics that we wanted to write about, because it makes writing in the public interest and looking through legislation a lot easier if you are interested in the topic.
Yeah.
So I think that was one of my favorite things. I also was fortunate enough in that class, because I'm in the honors college, to be able to do an honors option that involved actually working with a nonprofit. And so I was actually doing work in that nonprofit that I want to do after I graduate, which is writing content for the web and doing outreach kind of things for a nonprofit like that. So that was really cool. I think that the most challenging part was when we were doing the mock court cases. I was having to write as a person that I wasn't.
Yeah, we have one project where we did look at an argument on social media. So we looked at how different representatives in the Michigan House of Representatives and Senate use social media, and in Congress. And I remember that there was one when they were writing one particular argument, I had them bring in like a Twitter discussion of that issue to see the ways that social media changes. Like, so they're reading the actual like public policy documents for a particular issue. Like, they're reading all of the briefs and transcripts from the hearings and bills and like looking at the way that a bill is made. So what I had them do at the same time is look at sort of the way it's being discussed on social media and where the similarities and contradictions and like confusion lies, and the ways that the arguments change when you see them online. So I thought that was really interesting, because a lot of people, wouldn't know where to go to read a bill, but they might read Senator Stabenow's Twitter. So, so what does it look like there? How is the argument different there? And what we found, and this is probably not a surprise to you all because of the projects that we did in 202, that there can be much more pathos driven, much more visual, all of those kinds of things.
So we didn't do any social media writing necessarily in this course. However, with writing and with PW, what it really helps you with is this concept of genre too, right? And so if you can write about it in one avenue, you can adjust your same message for a different platform.
Yeah.
And so I would say that the practice writing I did in there can help me to be adjusted for other platforms and genres as well.
So I think about that a lot, actually, because the core courses require you to think about writing in a number of different ways, right? Like visually, you think about digital, think about how you write digitally. Those are all really important pieces, I think, because often the government, and we talk about this a lot actually, the government is about 25, 30 years behind when it comes to, a lot of it has not entered the digital age. So one of the things that I want to think about for the course the next time we teach it is to think about really how to blend the skills that you get in digital and visual writing with the sort of old school text-based writing that we do in 331. That being said, the last thing I'll say about that is that 331 is an excellent place to learn about deliberative rhetoric, or the ways that we shape an argument with words. So, we've talked about this a little bit in 202, but the way that you make a claim and you use evidence and different kinds of rhetorical strategies to make arguments. So it sort of I think complements those courses in that way, that you'll get much more of that in this course, but you'll also start to think about how to become a stronger writer, and make stronger arguments with text, but also be thinking about how to translate those arguments into more visual and digital formats.
Yeah, I think that all PW classes always focus on audience, purpose, and tone. And so those are three things that you have to be very aware of when you're writing in the public interest, even maybe more so than other jobs, because other jobs there's just a product on the line, but when you're writing about people, you have to be very cognizant of how you're representing an issue and how you're representing a group of people, especially if you don't belong to that group. So I think writing in the public interest connects to everything else in that way.